The morning sun cast long shadows across the private hangar as Amara Chen adjusted her designer blazer, her phone pressed between her ear and shoulder. At 42, she had built Robotech Solutions from nothing into a multi-billion-dollar empire. But today something felt off. Maybe it was the way her new pilot kept glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking. "I need those contracts reviewed by tonight." She spoke firmly into the phone, watching the ground crew prepare her jet for the flight to Silicon Valley. The quarterly board meeting couldn't wait, even though her instincts were screaming that something wasn't right. The pilot, David Turner, stood by the plane's entrance, his posture perfect in his crisp uniform. He smiled politely as she approached, but there was an intensity in his eyes that didn't match his calm demeanor. "Good morning, Ms. Chen. Weather looks clear all the way to California." Amara nodded, climbing the stairs while responding to urgent emails. Running a tech empire meant every minute counted. Inside the luxurious cabin, she settled into her favorite leather seat, noticing how Turner seemed unusually familiar with her routine, having already set out her preferred sparkling water and tablet stand. As the engines hummed to life, Amara reviewed her presentation on quantum computing breakthroughs. Her company was about to revolutionize the industry again, just like they had 5 years ago. But her concentration kept breaking as she caught Turner studying the cabin's layout with unusual interest. "Is everything all right, Mr. Turner?" she asked, measuring his reaction carefully. Years of business negotiations had taught her to read people well. "Of course, Ms. Chen. Just familiarizing myself with the aircraft's systems," he replied smoothly, too smoothly. Something about his voice triggered a distant memory, but she couldn't place it. The jet lifted off gracefully into the morning sky. Amara tried to focus on work, but her mind kept drifting to strange details. How Turner had known about her preference for the right side window seat, how his hands had tensed when she mentioned the board meeting, how his accents seemed to slip occasionally. 30 minutes into the flight, she noticed they were flying slightly off their usual route. A small detail, but in Amara's world, small details often meant the difference between success and failure. She pulled up the flight tracker on her tablet, frowning at the course deviation. Just then, Turner's voice came over the intercom, carrying an edge she hadn't heard before. "Ms. Chen, we're encountering some unexpected weather patterns. I'll need to make a slight course adjustment." The turbulence that followed felt more like evasive maneuvering than weather navigation. Amara's heart raced, but her face remained calm. She hadn't survived 2 decades in the tech industry by panicking easily. As she reached for her satellite phone, the signal bars disappeared one by one. Looking out the window, she noticed they were heading toward unfamiliar territory, the landscape below growing increasingly remote. The truth hit her like a thunderbolt. This wasn't a regular flight, and David Turner wasn't just a new pilot. The question was, what did he want, and how was she going to turn this situation around? As always, Amara Chen prepared to face the challenge head-on, her mind already calculating possible escape scenarios while maintaining her composed exterior. The jet veered sharply to the left, causing Amara's tablet to slide across her desk. Through the window, she watched as familiar flight paths disappeared beneath clouds that seemed more convenient than threatening. Her pilot, David Turner, had been lying about the weather. The sky ahead was perfectly clear. Keeping her voice steady, Amara pressed the intercom button. "Mr. Turner, I can see we're heading into restricted airspace. Perhaps we should return to our original flight plan." The silence that followed told her more than words could have. Finally, his voice crackled through the speaker, different now, harder, more determined. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Ms. Chen. We have a few things to discuss about Robotech's early days, specifically about what happened to my father." The words hit her like ice water. Memories from 15 years ago flooded back, the missing patents, the mysterious disappearance of her former partner, the investigation that led nowhere. She glanced at her phone again. Still no signal. Turner must be using a signal jammer. Below them, civilization gave way to desert landscape. They were flying over Nevada now, far from their planned route to Silicon Valley. Amara noticed a small airstrip emerging from the dusty terrain. Nothing more than a narrow strip of asphalt surrounded by abandoned buildings. "Whatever you think you know," she spoke firmly into the intercom, "there's more to the story. Your father." "Save it," Turner cut her off. "I've spent years planning this moment. You're going to tell me everything, starting with why you stole his designs and forced him to run." The jet began its descent, engines whining as Turner aligned with the makeshift runway. Amara gripped her armrests, mind racing. She had proof of what really happened, encrypted files that could change everything, if she could only access them in time. Through the cockpit door, she heard Turner muttering into a radio, speaking in coded phrases. They weren't alone in this. Someone else was waiting at that airstrip, and she doubted they were friendly. As they dropped altitude, Amara spotted movement on the ground, 3 black SUVs approaching the runway. This wasn't just about Turner's revenge anymore. Something bigger was unfolding, something that made her past decisions seem insignificant compared to the danger they now faced. The landing gear deployed with a heavy thud. Amara reached under her seat, fingers finding the hidden compartment where she kept her emergency satellite beacon. One press of the button would alert her security team, but timing was everything. Too soon, and Turner might do something rash. Too late, and those SUVs would reach them first. The wheels touched down hard on the rough airstrip, sending dust clouds billowing around the jet. As they taxied to a stop, Amara made her decision. Sometimes the best defense was a shocking truth, and she had 15 years' worth of those locked away, waiting for exactly this moment. The jet's door opened with a hydraulic hiss as David Turner emerged from the cockpit, his pilot's uniform neat, but his eyes wild with 15 years of built-up anger. Amara stood her ground in the cabin, hands relaxed at her sides, watching him carefully. "Sit down," Turner commanded, gesturing to a seat. Outside, the black SUVs were getting closer, kicking up trails of desert dust. "It's time you explained everything." Amara settled into her seat, maintaining eye contact. "Before those vehicles arrive, you should know something. Your father didn't just disappear. He made a choice that saved both our lives." Turner's hand trembled slightly. "Stop lying. I found the old contracts. You forced him out, stole his patents, everything he worked for." "Those contracts were fake," Amara said calmly, reaching for her tablet. "Your father created them himself as a cover story. What you never knew was that he uncovered something dangerous, corporate espionage that went far beyond our company." The first SUV screeched to a halt beside the jet. Turner glanced nervously out the window, his certainty wavering for the first time. "What are you talking about?" Amara pulled up an encrypted file, turning the screen toward him. "Look at the date stamp on this video. 3 days before your father disappeared. Watch." The footage showed Turner's father in his old office, frantically copying files. But instead of stealing secrets, he was documenting evidence, proof of international technology theft, corrupt board members, and threats against his family. Turner's face paled as he watched his father speak directly to the camera. "If you're seeing this, David, it means Amara kept her promise. She agreed to protect you by playing the villain, making everyone believe she drove me out. The truth would have gotten us both killed." Outside, men in dark suits approached the jet. Turner recognized one of them, an executive who'd been quietly visiting his father's office in those final days. The same man who'd later helped fund Turner's pilot training encouraged his plan for revenge. "They've been watching you," Amara said softly, "using your anger to get to me, and the evidence your father left behind. That's why I couldn't tell you the truth until now. They were always listening." The jet's door suddenly swung open as the men started climbing the stairs. Turner looked at Amara, 15 years of hatred crumbling into understanding. In that moment, he had to choose: believe the comfortable lie he'd lived with for years, or accept a truth that would change everything. His hand moved to his pocket, where a second pilot's badge rested, his father's old company ID, kept as a reminder of his mission for revenge. But now it felt different, like a key to a door he'd never noticed before. Time was running out. The men were almost in the cabin. And in the distance, a faint sound grew stronger. Helicopter blades cutting through the desert air, coming closer with each passing second. The tension in the cabin could be cut with a knife as the men in dark suits entered. Leading them was Richard Powell, a senior board member at a rival tech company, his expensive suit unable to hide the coldness in his eyes. "Well done, Turner," Powell said smoothly. "Though I must say, Ms. Chen doesn't look very surprised to see us." His gaze swept the cabin, lingering on Amara's tablet. "I believe you have something that belongs to us." Turner stood between them, his pilot's uniform suddenly feeling like armor. The helicopter sounds grew louder, but Powell seemed unconcerned. "No one's coming to help. We've made sure of that." Amara stayed seated, her fingers quietly working on her tablet. "You really should have checked the jet's security upgrades, Richard. I learned a lot about protection after what happened to Turner's father." Powell's smile faltered slightly. Outside, the helicopter was now visible. Not the police rescue Powell had prepared for, but a sleek military-grade aircraft. Turner recognized the markings: FBI counterintelligence. "David," Amara spoke calmly, "your father didn't just document their corporate espionage. He built a backdoor into their entire operation. Every transaction, every threat, every murder disguised as an accident. It's all been recording for 15 years. Powell's men reached for their weapons, but Turner was faster. He slammed his hand on the cabin's control panel, activating the emergency locks. The jet's doors sealed with a hiss, trapping everyone inside. "You're bluffing," Powell snarled, but sweat beaded on his forehead. "Those files were destroyed." Amara smiled for the first time that day. "Your team only found the decoys. The real evidence has been updating itself automatically, streaming to secure servers. David's father was a genius with failsafes." The helicopter landed beside the jet, sending waves of dust against the windows. Powell lunged for the tablet, but Turner intercepted him, years of combat training kicking in. They grappled as Powell's men tried to intervene in the cramped space. Amara remained surprisingly calm, pressing one final button on her tablet. Every screen in the cabin suddenly lit up, displaying fragments of the evidence: secret meetings, offshore accounts, and most importantly, footage of Powell himself ordering the surveillance of Turner's family. FBI agents were now surrounding the jet. Inside, Turner had Powell pinned, the truth of the past 15 years crashing over him like a wave. He looked at Amara, seeing not the villain of his story, but the protector she'd always been. "Your father would be proud," she said quietly, as the FBI began their breach of the cabin. "He always said you'd figure it out eventually. He just needed you to be safe until you did." The sound of the FBI breaching the door echoed through the cabin. Powell and his men raised their hands, knowing their decades-long scheme had finally unraveled. The standoff was ending, but for Turner and Amara, it felt more like a beginning. Inside the sealed jet cabin, as FBI agents secured Powell and his men, Amara pulled up more files on her tablet. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of finally sharing the truth she'd guarded for so long. "Watch this," she said to Turner, who sat beside her, still processing everything. The video showed his father's private office from 15 years ago. The timestamp read 3 a.m., the night before he disappeared. In the footage, Turner's father worked frantically at his computer, occasionally glancing over his shoulder. He spoke in hushed tones to someone off-camera. Amara, much younger then, helping him gather evidence. "They'd infiltrated every level," his father whispered in the video. "The semiconductor patents were just the beginning. They're building backdoors into every piece of technology we create. Military systems, power grids, everything. Turner leaned closer, drinking in the sight of his father. The man he blamed Amara for destroying was actually fighting to protect something bigger than himself. The video continued, showing massive data transfers, encrypted files being copied, and most shockingly, Powell's team secretly filming Turner's college campus. They were watching me. Turner's voice cracked. All this time. Amara nodded. Your father discovered they were grooming you, planning to use you against both of us eventually. That's why he chose to disappear. He knew they'd keep you alive as leverage if they thought they could turn you against me. Outside the jet, FBI teams were processing the scene. Inside, more videos played. Years of surveillance footage showing how Powell's organization had manipulated Turner's life. His chance meeting with a flight instructor who encouraged him to become a pilot. The mysterious scholarship that paid for his training. Every step had been calculated. But why didn't you ever tell me? Turner asked, his anger now tinged with understanding. Because they were always watching, Amara replied, showing him another file. Every phone call, every email. We needed them to believe their plan was working. Your father, she paused, pulling up one final video. He left this for today. The screen flickered to life, showing Turner's father in a location he didn't recognize. The timestamp was from just 1 week ago. He was older, grayer, but very much alive. Son, his father began, if you're watching this, it means you're finally safe. Everything I did, leaving you, letting you believe the worst of Amara, it was all to protect you. And now it's time to finish what we started. Turner felt tears rolling down his cheeks as years of misplaced hatred melted away. Through the jet's window, he could see Powell being led to an FBI vehicle, his empire crumbling. But for Turner, something new was being built from those ruins. Understanding, truth, and the chance to make things right. The FBI's secure conference room hummed with tension as Amara connected her tablet to the main screen. Turner sat beside her, still processing the revelation that his father was alive. Agent Lee, the lead investigator, spread dozens of files across the table. Your father's surveillance system was brilliant, Agent Lee explained, pulling up complex diagrams. For 15 years, it quietly recorded every move Powell's organization made. Banking transactions, secret meetings, even their attempts to infiltrate government contracts. Turner picked up a photo showing Powell meeting with foreign tech executives. So all those jobs I was offered after flight school were strategic placements, Amara finished. They needed you close to their operations, building your trust while feeding your anger toward me. Every flight route you handled contained their stolen tech shipments. You were their perfect, unknowing courier. The screen flickered to life with another recorded message from Turner's father. He looked tired but determined, speaking from what appeared to be a safe house. The evidence is spread across 37 servers worldwide, he explained. Powell's people only found the decoys. The real data was always hidden in plain sight, inside their own network. Agent Lee nodded appreciatively. Your father created a virus that looked like normal system updates. Every time they upgraded their security, they actually gave us more access. Pretty clever. Amara pulled up more files, showing how deep the conspiracy went. Major tech companies compromised, military contracts infiltrated, all while using Turner as their unwitting pawn. The weight of it all made his head spin. But why reveal everything now? Turner asked, turning to Amara. Why not wait longer? She brought up one final document, a pending contract worth billions. Next week, Powell's company was set to acquire control of 3 major defense contractors. With their backdoors already in place, they would have had access to everything. Agent Lee finished grimly. Military communications, weapon systems, satellite networks. We couldn't let that happen. A knock at the door interrupted them. Another agent entered, whispering something to Lee. The senior agent's expression shifted from concern to relief. "They found him," Lee announced. "Your father. He's being extracted from a safe location in Switzerland. He'll be here within 24 hours." Turner felt his heart race. After 15 years of hatred and blame, he would finally see his father again. But more than that, he had a chance to understand the sacrifice that had torn his family apart to protect something bigger than themselves. Amara placed a hand on his shoulder. "Your father never stopped protecting you," she said softly. "Everything he did, every step of the plan, was to keep you safe until the truth could come out." The FBI headquarters buzzed with activity as reports came in about Powell's associates attempting to flee the country. Agent Lee paced the conference room, coordinating teams across multiple cities. Turner watched the chaos unfold on various screens, each showing different surveillance feeds. "They're getting desperate," Amara observed, tracking suspicious money transfers lighting up on her tablet. "Powell's entire network is trying to disappear before your father arrives." Suddenly, alarms blared through the building. Security feeds showed armed men breaching the parking garage. These weren't ordinary criminals. They moved with military precision, heading straight for the secure floors. "They're here for the evidence," Agent Lee shouted, grabbing his phone. "And they know your father is en route. We need to move now." Turner's pilot training kicked in as he assessed escape routes. "The helipad," he said firmly. "I can fly us out if we can reach it." Security doors slammed shut throughout the building as gunfire erupted in the stairwells. Amara quickly transferred critical files to a secure cloud server, then destroyed her tablet. They couldn't risk Powell's people getting even a fragment of the data. Agent Lee led them through emergency corridors, using his clearance to bypass locked doors. Behind them, explosions rocked the building's lower floors. Powell's team was creating chaos to cover their true objective. "The helicopter's ready," an agent reported through Lee's radio. "But they've got men on the roof. You'll need to clear the landing zone." They reached the final stairwell to the roof, hearing footsteps above and below. Turner grabbed Amara's arm, pulling her into a maintenance alcove as bullets sparked against the walls. Agent Lee returned fire, providing cover. "My father," Turner shouted over the noise. "If they know he's coming." "FBI has his transport covered," Lee assured him, reloading his weapon. "But we need to get you two out of here. You're the only ones who can verify all the evidence once he arrives." Through a small window, they could see the helicopter's rotors starting to spin. Freedom was just 2 floors up, but Powell's men were closing in from both directions. They needed a plan, fast. Amara reached into her jacket, pulling out a small device. "Your father gave me this years ago," she explained. "It's an electromagnetic pulse generator. It'll fry their communications, but also knock out power to the building's security doors." "Which means everyone gets through," Turner realized. "It's a gamble." Agent Lee nodded grimly. "Sometimes the best plan is the craziest one. Do it." Amara pressed the button. The lights died instantly, plunging them into darkness as every electronic device in range went dead. In the chaos that followed, they made their move toward the roof, toward escape, and toward a reunion 15 years in the making. The helicopter blades cut through the night air as Turner gripped the controls, navigating through the darkness. The EMP blast had knocked out not just the building's power, but also most of the city block's lighting, creating the perfect cover for their escape. Amara sat beside him in the cockpit, while Agent Lee manned the door, watching for pursuit. Below them, emergency vehicles converged on the FBI building, their lights creating a sea of red and blue in the darkness. "We've got company," Lee shouted, pointing to 2 black helicopters rising from different parts of the city. Powell's backup plan. Turner pushed the helicopter to its limits, weaving between buildings. His years of flight training had prepared him for many things, but a high-speed aerial chase hadn't been one of them. Still, something felt natural about it, like his father had known this day would come. Head for the mountains, Amara instructed, checking a paper map, one of the few things still working after the EMP. Your father has a safe house in an old mining complex. It's off all official records. The pursuing helicopters were gaining ground, their spotlights sweeping the darkness. A warning shot streaked past their tail rotor, too close for comfort. They're not trying to kill us, Turner realized, banking hard right to avoid another shot. They want us to lead them to my father. Agent Lee's radio crackled to life. One of the few hardened devices that had survived the EMP. This is Transport 7. Package is secure and diverted to secondary location. Repeat, package is secure. Relief flooded Turner's chest. His father was safe, but they still needed to make it to the rendezvous point. The mountain peaks loomed ahead, their shadows offering hiding places among the cliffs and valleys. A bullet pierced the helicopter's side panel, missing them, but sending a spray of sparks across the cockpit. Turner dropped altitude, flying dangerously close to the treetops. The pursuing helicopters struggled to follow, their larger size making it harder to maneuver in the tight space. There, Amara pointed to a narrow canyon. The entrance is behind a waterfall. Your father used to say it was his insurance policy. Turner had to make a split-second decision. The canyon was barely wide enough for their helicopter, and in the darkness, hitting any obstacle meant certain disaster. But staying in the open wasn't an option either. With a deep breath, he made the turn, feeling the wind buffet the helicopter as they entered the narrow space. Behind them, one of the pursuing aircraft attempted to follow but pulled up at the last second, unable to risk the tight fit. The waterfall appeared ahead, a silver curtain in the moonlight. Turner could barely make out a dark gap behind it, their salvation, if his piloting skills were good enough to thread this final needle. Through the roaring waterfall and into a hidden cavern, Turner guided the helicopter to a gentle landing. The massive cave was illuminated with emergency lighting, equipped with computers and surveillance systems untouched by the EMP blast. But none of that mattered when Turner saw the figure standing by the command center. His father. 15 years older, gray-haired, but unmistakably alive. For a moment, neither moved, the helicopter's slowing rotors the only sound echoing through the cave. Then his father stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "David," he said simply, opening his arms. Turner rushed forward, 15 years of anger and confusion dissolving into a tight embrace. Amara and Agent Lee stepped back, giving them space for this long-overdue reunion. "I'm so sorry," his father whispered. "Every day I wanted to tell you the truth. Watching you from afar, seeing your pain, it killed me inside." The cave's monitors showed Powell and his associates being arrested across the globe. The evidence Turner's father had gathered was bringing down an entire network of corporate spies and corrupt executives. 15 years of patience had paid off. "Your escape triggered everything," Amara explained, showing them the synchronized raids happening worldwide. While Powell's people were chasing us, FBI teams were moving in on every member of their organization. The chase was the final distraction we needed. Turner's father led them to a wall of screens showing news reports coming in from around the world. Major tech companies were being exposed, stolen patents recovered, and compromised security systems identified. The biggest corporate espionage case in history was unfolding. "But what happens now?" Turner asked, looking between his father and Amara. "Now," his father smiled, "we rebuild. Powell's people infiltrated the tech industry because they understood its power. But we can use that same power to protect people instead of exploiting them. Together." Agent Lee received confirmation that the pursuing helicopters had withdrawn. The cave's location remained secure. Outside, the sun was rising, marking the end of the longest night and the beginning of something new. "The real work starts now," Amara said, extending her hand to Turner. "Your father and I could use a good pilot on our team. Someone who knows how to stay cool under pressure." Turner looked at his father, who nodded encouragingly. The anger that had driven him for 15 years was gone, replaced by understanding and purpose. He took Amara's hand, then his father's, forming a circle of trust that had been broken, but was now stronger for having been rebuilt. The truth had finally come to light, reminding them all that sometimes the longest journeys lead us right back home, not to where we started, but to where we were always meant to be.